Wasn't that so nourishing for our spirits and our souls? Oh, that felt so good. Well, are you okay? I know. Well, everybody, I know it might be a surprise to you all, but I am not Edwin Gaines. She was scheduled to be here for the past couple months today, but she fell ill, and so I know we're all holding her in our highest thoughts of wholeness and health and wellness. And for those of you who don't know Edwin Gaines, she is like the queen of prosperity. It is her life's vision and purpose to share the abundance and prosperity of life with the entire world. And she is amazing at it and been doing it for ages and ages and ages. And her message is creating permanent prosperity, the secret to permanent prosperity in our life. And she begins every message with, "My name is Edwin Gaines, and I am a woman of power." So I wanted to invite us all to just say that, not a woman, a person, but I want us all to just say together, "My name is, and I am a person of power." Yes, my name is Nicole, and I am a person of power. Doesn't that feel good? Doesn't matter if we believe it yet or not. Well, we're working on it, right? That's why we're here. So what is the secret of permanent prosperity? That's what I wondered as soon as I knew that I was the one going to have to give the speech. Right? Actually, everybody for this Sunday canceled or somehow vanished. And so it was by divine appointment that our beautiful Sunny and Bill and myself are here today. Yeah. Yes. Oh, so Edwin describes prosperity as this: a vitally alive physical body, a physical home to comfortably support the spiritual beings that we are. She considers permanent prosperity to be relationships that are nurturing, honest, and that work for us all the time. Work that is so enjoyable and so filled with passion for us that it doesn't feel like work at all, but play. And enough money for us to spend forever. So, I think all of us could use some permanent prosperity in our life. Yes? Yes. Okay. So, and we should. Of course we should, right? Because whether we know it intuitively or intellectually, it is our divine birthright. And if you don't believe me, I have some data for us. Well, I have some words of wisdom by somebody who is much more wise than I am. His name was Jesus. And he said that it is the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. That it is the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. And where is that kingdom? Within us. Yes. Every great religion, spiritual path, or wisdom tradition has pointed in many different names to this very same idea, the very same principle, that the ultimate truth, the ultimate treasure is within us. Plato called it the good and the beautiful. Aristotle called it being. Plotinus called it the infinite. Ralph Waldo Emerson called it the oversoul. In Australian Aborigine cultures, they call it dream time. In South African tribes, they call it Ubuntu. And all of this doesn't matter what word we use. What matters is that there's a collective idea and understanding that there is a kingdom within us, that there is a space within us that creates all the good that we could ever possibly want or desire. And it is ours for the taking and creating. But But it can be kind of, let's say, confusing, feeling a little uneven when we feel like, when we're in that state or place of our life where we don't feel it. You know, there comes a time, or there has in my life at least, where I was like, I would be sitting there listening to someone saying this to me, and I would be like, maybe everybody else, but not me. There's no kingdom in here, you know. Maybe a junkyard, I don't know. But it's not the truth. It just feels like the truth, right? There's a lot of untangling we got to do. And so that's where Edwin's 4 spiritual laws of prosperity really help us to bring out the treasures that are within us. But first, we have to remember that we are each the centers of our own universe. Every one of us is the center of our own universe. What that means is, just like there are physical laws, there are spiritual laws, right? Like Newton's third law of motion that says for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. That is equivalent to the spiritual law of circulation, that what we put out comes back to us in ways that we could have never thought up or imagined. And certainly not always, or hardly ever, in the ways that we put it out. And so the 4 spiritual laws of prosperity are this. I think of them more like practices, but she calls them laws, so that's fine. So they are tithing, goal setting, forgiveness, and divine purpose. And let me just talk about this first one for a second, because this is the one I had the hardest time with. I mean, I didn't grow up in one of those religions that like taught you like, you have to tithe. I'm like, well, I don't even know what tithing is, right? Something in the Hebrew scriptures that says about 10%, something like that. But truly, there is this like ancient ritual of sacrificing, like your biggest, fattest pig or your most loved goat that you are willing to sacrifice for your God. And so Edwin Gaines says that we must give 10% of all of our goods to the person, place, or organization that we are spiritually fed. And she says in doing so, we are going to open up that circulation, and it's going to just continue to come back to us. And for a lot of years, I thought, what, you know, when churches or centers would talk about this, I'm like, they're just trying to get my money. Like, what are they, you know, what is with this whole 10% thing? Until I realized all that goes into running a church, and like, I don't get paid that much, so, yeah. So what I did, I'm just going to tell you what I did. About 10 years ago, I was broke. Single mom, 2 kids, just moved to California. We were on a serious budget. And when we started to really decide that we were going to at least halfway buy into this tithing idea, we were able to budget $5 a week, okay? And that was laundry money. So we just did it. It was also gas money, but we decided we have to give something. If this is a real spiritual practice and a real spiritual law, we're gonna have to give something and just know. And we began doing that over and over and over again. And what I finally started to realize, what the real practice was, feeling like nervous and ill and fear. All that stuff that started to come out. And I realized it really had nothing to do with tithing for me so much as it had to do with all of my beliefs of lack and where my money came from and where my source came from. Our source is the divine. You know, we live in a spiritual universe, and that is true, but it takes a long time for some of us, me, to get that through my brain. And little by little, I've been able to increase my tithe to 10%. And I've tithed to here because this is where I'm spiritually fed. But let me show you one of the greatest ways that this circulation showed up for me was being a single parent, just barely coming off of welfare and getting a career up in a hospital as a respiratory therapist, I had this call to ministry. And that's like a $45,000 call, And I'm thinking, how in the world is this going to happen? I'm just going to know. I'm just going to know. I've had to live day by day, every other, with everything else. So what happened was the universe conspired to have a woman pass away who decided to give a few $1 million to our organization only for ministers under 35 to get a full scholarship through ministerial school. Like a year before I started. That's how it works for me, folks. I don't always get big, huge chunks of cash, but this kind of stuff just like comes out of thin air, right? And it's like, whoa. You desire something so much, and you put in the work, and you put in the time, you put in the spiritual practice, and behind the scenes, the universe is like reconfiguring everything to present it to you in external form. So that was really cool. So the second law of spiritual prosperity is goal setting. And really, this is like intention setting, because what's really important here is that you take a good and honest look at where you are. And then you take a real good and honest look at where you want to be. And then you become conscious. You become aware. And once you become aware of where you are and where you want to be, you start to set that intention within, and you move towards that. But it's all about becoming aware. What is it that I truly desire? When we're ambiguous in life, we live by the law of averages. And who knows what's going to show up then. So the third law, this is a really hard one too. The third law of spiritual prosperity is forgiveness. How many of you still have somebody you need to forgive? Okay. How many of you still need to forgive yourself? Okay. Yeah. I totally get it. The thing about it is that holding in shame and blame of who we've been or what we've done or where we've come from fills up our entire space. It fills up our entire inner being so that we leave no room for the calm confidence and the quiet expectancy of more, of good. There is no room for good when we're filled up with anger and aggression and frustration and resentment. We have to forgive people. And I love what Oprah says. Forgiveness does not mean anything except that the past couldn't be any different than it was. When we accept that the past couldn't be any different than it was, because it wasn't any different than it was, we can be okay. We just deal, right? And that's a form of forgiveness. And when we recognize that we couldn't be any different than we were because we weren't any different than we were, and what we did and what we're ashamed of and what we have fear of in our past, it just is. And if we're here today, that says a lot about us. If we're here sitting in this room together, growing on our spiritual journey in consciousness together in a positive, affirmative faith, then that says a lot about who we believe we are. And the fourth law of prosperity, I want to read it because I think she says it better than I could. She says, the fourth law of prosperity is you must seek, discover, and follow your divine purpose. You must assign specific and significant meaning to your life, giving yourself strength and endurance and bringing joy to your existence on a daily basis. When you align yourself with your divine purpose, you bring passion to all that you do. And our divine purpose, as Reverend Michael always reminds me, does not necessarily mean your occupational purpose, because he brings his divine purpose to chemical engineering every day. I don't know how, but he does. But what it means, a divine purpose is who we be in the world, how we decide to show up, how we decide to interact with others, how we decide to show compassion or kindness or forgiveness to ourselves or others. That's a divine purpose. I am here to be the light of love in the world. That's a divine purpose. I am here for divine empowerment. That is my divine purpose. And so I want to invite us this week to just take one of these 4 ideas, one of these 4 practices, and like me, be a scientist and just experiment. Just experiment, maybe with forgiveness or with goal setting or tithing or divine purpose. Just practice and see what happens. Have a little faith, just a little faith that maybe, just maybe, somebody or she knows what she's talking about. And it could possibly transform your entire life. So thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Thank you.